is a tutorial for how to do the Bones Tell Your Height charts. All right, the first thing you need to do on Google Classroom is go find that assignment. It might be posted in two different places. There's the Bones Tell Your Height materials that has the slideshow. It has the PDF with the instructions on what we did when we were measuring our bones. You might have the Google form that you use to submit your data so we could get the class set of data. And then there's also the Bones Tell Your Height submission. Depending on what class you're in, it should be in and around the end of March that we were doing this in all of my 3 forensics classes. And the Bones Tell Your Height submission, in the instructions, you have your copy of the data, and then I've added some additional data that we can pull from. Open up your copy of the data. It should look like this. This is an example of H block data. Some of you might be in C block. It might look a little different, but what you should have is columns for height, humerus length, and femur. You probably have a column for sex and block and first name. We really just need to concentrate on these 3 columns, columns C, D, and E. Okay. If you do not have additional data underneath your data, now is the time to get it. So go back to your Bones Tell Your Height submission and click on the spreadsheet for additional data. It should look like this. You want to copy and paste these values onto your copy of the submission. All right, to do that, you can click and drag columns A through D. You can click on column A, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, and then click on column D. Or you could click on each column and copy them one at a time. I'm just going to click and drag column A through D. All right, I'll go up to Edit, Copy, and then go to my H block data example, and I'm going to paste it. Where you paste it is important. You want to line up the column with height, and you want to click on the next available cell. You don't want to double click so that you get a cursor. You just want to single click on that cell so that there's a blue square on the bottom. Okay, you click right there, and then you go to Edit, Paste, or you can hit Control V. The data should populate underneath. All right, and my height data column lines up with the other heights. These numbers should be greater than 100 centimeters. Your humerus data lines up with the other humerus data. These numbers should be between, the high 20s to the low 50s. And then your femur data lines up. These are going to be in the low 40s to maybe the low 70s, probably no greater than 60 centimeters. Okay. Some people did make some wacky measurements when they were doing this, and that's why we added a whole bunch more data to the data set so that we can have a better view of the trend line. The next thing we need to do is to insert our charts. The first chart we're going to enter is going to compare the height versus the humerus length. To do that, I'm going to click on column C. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and click on column D. So both columns are selected. Again, you can click and drag, or you can click on one column, hold down the Shift key, and click on column D so that both of these columns are highlighted in blue. Then, once they're highlighted, you go up to Insert a Chart. The computer might think for a minute or two, and it automatically populates a line chart. We don't want a line chart. We're going to change that over here in the chart editor under the setup window, and we're going to change the chart type from line chart. We're going to click on it, and we're going to change it to scatter chart with blue dots. It should look like this. The next thing I want to do is change the orientation of my axes. Right now, it has the humerus length on the y-axis, and it has your height on the x-axis, and I want to swap them. To do that, we're still in the setup window of the chart editor. You're going to come down here where it's gray and it says height in centimeters, and you're going to click on it and change it to humerus length. And then you're going to come down here under series where it says humerus length. You're going to click on it and you're going to change it to height. Now that we've done that, we can go into our customize window and kind of rearrange how it looks so that it helps us. And I'm going to show you how to get the formula for the trend line. Under customize, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the chart and axis titles. Right now, chart title is the first one that populates. I want to change chart title to horizontal axis. You can click on this drop-down menu and change to what you want to edit. I want to edit the name of this horizontal axis because it's no longer representing height, it's representing humerus length. So I want to change this to horizontal axis and change it from saying height to saying humerus. Then I'm going to go back in here to this drop-down menu and go to my vertical axis and change it from humerus length, and we're going to make it say height. Great. Now we're going to go into our series options. Once you open up the series options, you can scroll down a little bit, and there's going to be these 3 boxes. You want to click on trend line, and it's going to add a line of best fit through your data points. You might want to change the color to make it a little easier to see. The next thing we're going to do down here, we're still in our series tab, okay? And it's a little further down. Once we select the trend line, we get more options. Under label, we're going to change it from none to use equation. This is the formula for the line. Your height on the y-axis is equal to 1.85, which is the slope. And if you're in a different class, you might have a slightly different slope. That number might change if you're in C block or E block. So 1.85x, which is my humerus, plus 106, and that might also be different if you're in a different class, but somewhere in the 100 range, that's going to be the y-intercept, where the trend line crosses the y-axis. But right now, it looks like it's crossing at around 150. We need to edit our x-axis range. We need the minimum to be 0 and the maximum to be maybe 50. To do that, we're going to go to our horizontal axis options on the chart editor. We can change the minimum value to 0, and we'll change the maximum to, let's say, 55. That's going to be 55 centimeters. Okay, now our trend line crosses the y-axis, the y-intercept at 106, and that makes sense. Okay, the dots are still a little too high, and so we're going to change our y maximum from 200 to 220, and we can do that in the vertical axis bar. We'll change the minimum to 0, we'll change the max to 220, and now we've got dots that are in the center of our graph. Okay, again, this is the formula for this trend line, and if you find a humerus in the woods, you can take that value of x, how long is that humerus in centimeters, plug it into this equation, and out should pop the estimated height of the person whose humerus it belongs to.